don't you, if you can you walk us through your current offering for investors and tell us what that might look like if folks are interested in partnering with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking. So right now I have a project where I'm taking a single family house and it's on a big lot that's zoned perfectly for multiple ADUs. And our plan is to take that lot and develop it into a mid-rise apartment complex of almost 30 units. And I've set it up as a syndication. It's for accredited investors only. It's a 506C syndication, which is a part of Reg D. But it's all been set up with an SEC attorney. And the idea is that we're going to convert the main house into a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. We're going to convert the garage to start the process while we go through our entitlements. And then once we have our plans drawn up and approved by the city of San Diego, we'll go ahead and start doing ground up construction for this 3-story complex that's identical to the building that's right next door. So we know that it's possible. And it's just a matter of going through and raising the capital for the construction funds and then doing the build. The project should take us about 3 or 4 years. And we're looking to raise increments of $50,000 or more from investors who should expect 20 to 25% annual return on their money. So the plan is to sell it at the end of the project and then find another place to do the same type of thing here in San Diego.
Yeah, interesting. So there's a single family home, and I'm guessing, I'm trying to picture this. Is there like a big amount of land that's behind it on this plot? Or what does the property look like?
Yeah, it's like that, but it's the opposite. So it's this really pretty front yard that's enormous. That's got all these very nice vegetation that's in the front, but then this little tiny house on the way back edge, and it's right next to a bus stop here in San Diego. So it's got the size and multifamily zoning that will allow us to really max out the density according to the new regulations here in town. And that's what we intend to do.
Interesting. So will you keep like a small driveway on the side or something, or will you tear down that house as part of the build process, or?
We're actually not tearing down the house on this one because it is all the way at the edge. There will be like a walkway, but not a driveway to the house. So one of the conditions that make the property ripe for the ADU regulations is that it's in this transit priority area or sustainable development area, and it doesn't have parking requirements. So we don't need to have a driveway. We don't need to have any parking for the tenants. And the concept is that they'll rely on street parking, which is somewhat available, and then also from the city's transit.
Interesting. Okay. So and that will be kept and parceled as part of the sale when you sell the whole thing. The single family unit will be included with that as well.
Yeah, that's our primary exit strategy would be selling the one property all under one listing. But there is an option. There's like a new regulation in San Diego that allows you to do a condo map and split things up. But it's still brand new, and they're working through regulations. By the time our building is done, that may be an additional exit strategy to sell the house with the garage conversion as one unit and then the 27-unit apartments as another unit. It's possible, but it's not option A, just because we're not sure how the regulations are going to shake out over the next couple of years, but it's possible.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. So essentially, you take all the learnings from all your other projects that you've been doing for a number of years, and it really kind of culminates into this kind of a twofold piece where you're going to do essentially what you've done a number of times with that single family, and then you're also going to be developing this. Now, is it 30 units of development, or is it only going to be 28 or 27 because the single family includes a portion of those as well?
So we bought it as a single family. We're turning the single family into 2 units, and then we're building 27 additional ADUs in that big front yard.
Got it. And so they're treated separately as separate ADUs, or like an apartment complex for the 27?
There's really no difference, Randy. It's like, I call it an ADU because that's what the regulations say it is. But you could absolutely not tell the difference between, a 3-story apartment building and what I'm about to build. It's the exact same thing. It just falls under a different regulatory to get it approved for that quantity. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Yeah, so investors can expect to get 20-25% return on their dollars. We're actually helping to solve some affordable housing issues there in San Diego as well, and improving density. So we're just really, you're actually answering a lot of questions not only for your investors but for folks who are trying to find affordable housing in that area. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you hit it right on the head. That's exactly what it is. It's not an income generating project. So it's not for the investor who's like looking for a cash on cash return that they're going to be able to pay their monthly bills with, but it is for someone who's a busy professional who's looking to make a little bit on the side but doesn't want to do any of the work on their own, and who also wants to do some good in this community.
Yeah, I love it. So when I first got into the passive investing space, I remember that whole idea of, are you a cash flow investor or are you a growth investor? Honestly, at the time, I didn't even really know. I knew at the time I was a high-income W-2 sales guy. I technically didn't even make any more money at the time. My goal was really just trying to grow, I call it this retirement bucket, but this bucket of money that I was trying to grow as fast as I could, because the sooner I could grow that bucket to a certain level, the sooner I could step away from my W-2. So it's really geared towards probably high-income folks that don't need cash flow, that are really just trying to grow wealth, which is a very specific type of avatar, very different than the person who's trying to, replace their W-2 income so they don't have to work immediately right away. These are folks generally that have good income. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not geared for the person that's looking to break away and they want to use this as their full-time income. It's really geared for somebody who's already got a good day job, but they've got a pile of cash that they want to put to work, and they don't need to see the returns immediately, but they want to see returns. So they're trading a big ROI at the end of the project with seeing quarterly checks.
Okay. Well, and so because I believe this is the first time you're raising from investors. So can you talk about what the cadence of communication is going to look like? What can investors expect to get? Like, are they going to see quarterly updates or biannual updates? What's that going to look like?
So I'm almost a year into it, and I'm doing quarterly updates. It's not a lot of updates right now. In this kind of project, you rush in the very beginning to get the house stabilized so it's covering all the holding costs, and then you draw plans and you submit the plans, and then you're just sitting in there and waiting for a year. So I'm going to do quarterly updates as we're going through entitlements, but nothing's really happening. You wait a lot, and then the city gives comments a couple times over the course of the next year, and then the plan gets approved. And really that's when you start to see noticeable things. You're digging holes in the ground. You're starting to build the foundation, building scaffolding. It's a little bit different, but a lot of this kind of project is waiting for the city to do its, what it's supposed to do for the entitlement process. But in the meantime, I'm issuing quarterly updates.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and investors can expect, like, for the first year, it's only going to be like still waiting on entitlement.
Right. Yeah. So anybody going into this kind of project has to be like, if a month goes by and nothing happens, it's because it doesn't happen that fast.
That makes sense. So now I know a lot of people like to invest in this, in real estate specifically, because some of the tax savings. Will there be really any tax benefits to this since it's development? I can't imagine you'd be doing cost segregations, or is that part of the plan as well?
If it turns around and we decide that we're going to hold on to it a little bit longer, a cost seg would be in the future. But you're right, there's not a huge benefit that I'm aware of in the first few years. So because it's got a lower purchase price compared to what the value is going to be at the end, we're not promoting the tax benefits that you bring up at this point on this project, because it's like we do a cost segregation, you'd get this big deduction on your taxes, and then we'd sell and you'd have to recoup all of it. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense on this particular project unless things change which sometimes they do, but that's not really the plan of this one.
Yeah, this is a development sell, short and sweet, very quickly try to double your money plus in that time period. Very good. Okay.
Yeah, short and sweet as in like 5 years, double your money.
Right.
Right. So it's definitely not, this is not an investment for everybody. Some patience is required in development, just like flipping a house. Even if you're going to go that basic, there's always going to be problems and hiccups in any kind of development project. It's not unusual to see delays when you're working with any kind of municipality. So it's for an investor who's aware of that type of thing and is willing to be patient, because at the end of the day, there is a nice payoff, but you have to wait, a few years to get there.
Yeah, fantastic. So, yeah, it sounds like a really, really cool project. As I mentioned before, I am a huge fan of infill development. It solves such a neat need for us, and it's a type of project that an operator like yourself, who's got a lot of experience in doing the type of projects that you do, this is the obvious next step for you. And I'm sure there's going to be a ton of learnings, and I imagine it will be just a matter of time before you're looking for that next project and looking for more investors on the next deal as well. So, what is the next few years in addition to this development project? What do you see the future for Doty Capital?
Yeah, that's really what we're doing. This is a bigger project than we've done in the past. It's been small multifamily when we've done these projects before. This is a bigger ground up construction, and the idea is to do more projects like this. Get our proof of concept, and then go for bigger developments. Go for more projects at the same time, and just scale it up. I like the regulations. I like our ability to work in the San Diego market. So none of that is going to change, but we're just looking to do more of the same type of thing.
This is geared towards the newer passive investor. So from an education standpoint, do you have any educational resources that you generally suggest for newer passive investors, whether it's books or podcast or any other materials that you suggest folks to learn more about this space?
Yeah, I mean, what I did is I spent a year listening to all of the Bigger Pockets podcasts. That's a start. Podcasts like this one are great just to get, you start to balance out what you're hearing on different shows. And when you start to hear the same types of concepts over and over again is where you really start to understand, okay, I do know what I'm talking about. So just that's what I did when I was driving around, because I had a job like yours. I was in outside sales, and I would spend my time, sucking up as much knowledge as I could on the market as possible. But I think if you're a passive investor and you're looking to get into the space and you want to figure out operators, I think one of the barriers to entry is that there's a lot of jargon in the industry. They talk about cap rate compression and the amount of leverage and mezzanine debt. And I think when you start to understand what those things really mean and what the operator is trying to do to increase the value of the property, I mean, I think that goes so far in your ability to evaluate the guys that are pitching you these projects. I thought one of the best books that I read in the very beginning was Crushing It in Apartments and Commercial Real Estate by Brian Murray. I thought that book did a great job of simplifying some of those complex topics into bite-sized chunks that I remember reading that being like, the light bulb kind of went on, and I understood what the guys were trying to do. So
love it.
There's a couple.
Yeah, great advice. I read the book years ago. I need to actually go back and revisit that one. But I think you're right. It was a really good explanation of the nuts and bolts of what you guys are doing. So yeah, good example. Thank you. We spent a lot of time in talking about due diligence. So I'm curious, do you have any due diligence questions that folks should be asking specifically in this either ADU or in infill or development space? We've focused most of our time on value add, so unique questions about this space would be really, really valuable.
Well, when you get to creating the value in apartments and with the ADU space, it's not that different. But what sets it apart and what you have to understand to be in this part of it, the ADU part of it, is just understanding the zoning. So if somebody can dive deep into what kind of projects they're looking for, what zoning makes that possible, with that zoning, how you do the calculations on how much you can build, like all of those are crucial parts of being able to figure out if you're just looking at adding 1 unit or if you're looking to add 27, in this case. It's not rocket science, but you have to have somebody who's going to go in and read the code and understand what the codes mean and how you can utilize those to maximize your project.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The whole zoning piece is something I've not ever paid really any attention to. I've heard about them. I understand that things are zoned in a certain way. That's what dictates like how many units you can put on a specific piece of land. But I've always been intrigued with this idea of going down to the zoning meetings that I hear people talk about to really understand what's going on here. What type of exceptions do you need to get? What is the city really trying to do? Because ultimately, you're trying to partner with the city to solve their problem, it seems like. So if you can figure out whatever it is that they're trying to solve and find a solution for that, then that's going to be a good option. So, yeah. Good question to add to the arsenal with the due diligence piece. So, a couple of fun questions here. You and I are both part of a community of guys who like to live life big, and one of those facets of that business that community is bucket list adventures. So, I'm curious, do you have a recent bucket list item you checked off your list, or one that you're hoping to in the near future?
The community that we're part of pushes us to try to improve the scale of your bucket list. So I would go from like an example of what I mean is like earlier this year, my oldest son just got tall enough to ride all of the roller coasters at Magic Mountain, Six Flags on the north side of LA. So I took him up there, spent a day, which is something I've been talking about with him for like 3 years. So finally getting to do that. So that's like one version of a bucket list thing that was cool, really just for me and my son. But I've scaled that up a little bit to the point where like next summer, I think our whole family of 5 is gonna spend a month in Europe. So that's like kind of a different change. And I think a lot of that has to do with the input of we're in GoBundance. So the mastermind that we're a part of has kind of pushed to have bigger trips with the family. So that's one of the things that I'm putting together now with my wife, which is fun and a little scary and
a
little bit of it. Yeah.
I bet. Yeah, good for you. I'll mark it on the calendar and circle back and hear about it next year.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing.
Awesome.
I've had the same experience. Like I've had my lifelong bucket list items, and they're getting to be a little more elaborate than what I've had in the past. So nothing like joining with other folks that have similar background and experiences to try to push each other. So very cool. Good for you.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, and then final question I like to ask everybody is, if you had $100,000 that you had to invest in the next week or so, but you could not put it in your own deal, where would you invest that money?
What I think the best thing to do is to find an operator or mentor that you want to learn from and invest in their deal. I think that's the truest way to like align with somebody else who you want to get to know better and you like the idea of the projects that they're doing. And by investing with them, I think you get a different kind of relationship with somebody that you're partnering with. And I've done that personally, and it's worked very well. And I've learned a ton from the guys that I've done that with. So I would just find another operator who I wanted to get to know better and invest in their projects.
Love it. I've not ever heard that answer, but I agree. I always share with folks, like, if you are getting into this space, you need to get some money at play, and that's when you're really going to start learning. You can listen to podcasts, read books all day long, but you really don't start learning until you wire your first wire and watch those monthly distributions or quarterly distributions, and those updates come in through. So yeah, really good advice. Really good advice, definitely. Well, very good. Well, Mark, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been an educational experience for me, and I'm sure for the listeners as well, but this has been a lot of fun, Mark. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Yeah, Randy, thanks for having me on. It's been great.